order. We've got 7 trustees present. Start our agenda prep for February 18th for the regular scheduled board meeting. Going first.
Madam President, well, I'll just go through the agenda. Madam President, members of the board, good evening. So as part of state law, we are required to give you the table report. Much of the data you've seen on 2 or 3 previous occasions, but we're required at this time to go through. So Ms. Ruiz Mills will give an academic update, short in nature. Item B, 6B, construction update. We'll present a brief construction update. Item C, discussion regarding SMCISD petitioning the legislature to amend the election code to allow the district to change its general election date from May to November. That was a board member requested item. So you will find the resolution and then the lawsuit from the paperwork from the GI forum has been provided to everybody.
Okay.
Is there a reason it's just a report item? Shouldn't we have like a action item under 8 in case the board's inclined to do so? Okay.
For next Monday. Item 7A, consider approval of minutes. 1, the January 22nd, 2019 regularly scheduled board meeting minutes, and 2, February 11th special call board meeting minutes. Item 8A, approval of additional HVAC position. It's Ms. Griffith.
Jay, will you do the presentation on that position?
Did we do that last year? Or?
We did do the budget process, and the board had asked that for justification to bring it back. So.
Oh, we haven't approved it. Okay.
Item B, consider approval of annual budget amendments. Ms. Griffith.
I'm sorry, I didn't look to see if we had any this time. I believe we have a couple. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Item 8C, consider approval of waiver for on-campus pregnancy-related services, compensatory education, home instruction. That's a
Deliver for you to review and conflict and original approval on my own subject.
it's a recurring waiver, right?
Yes, every 2 years, and it's for our students that receive in-home services for pregnancy-related.
Item 8D, consider approval of SMCISD academic calendar for 2019-2020.
Thank you.
Hernandez is passing out that option 1 and option 2.
This is the one that teachers and everybody votes on?
They haven't yet voted.
No. Thank you, sir.
The way it looks.
So we just wanted to provide a copy of option 1 and option 2 that the DEIC came up with. Our next steps are sending it out to community, to staff, beginning tomorrow to vote on option 1 and option 2, and then collecting votes all the way up until Monday at noon, and then we'll present the results on Monday night at the board meeting, and then if the board approves, or the board has capability of approving the calendar on Monday night. And the only difference between option 1 and option 2, it's pretty much switching out days. So if you're looking at option 1, October, there's no holiday. They prefer to have the holiday on December 20th on option 1. And then option 2, it's reversed. So the holiday moves out October 14th and no holiday on December 20th.
Okay.
That's the only difference.
Thank you.
between the 2 calendars.
Oh, good.
Is the,
Mr. Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Madam President. I guess just for clarification, is there a half-day professional workday in this schedule like there was in this current academic?
No, so no early release. This is, for this school year, the DEIC they brought feedback.
Yeah.
Let them know that there's a lot of absences on that
Yeah.
day. The work days would be more beneficial if it was a full work day.
Okay.
So we listened to that and made Parent Community Day also a full day as well.
Perfect.
And the two options are identical in the spring semester, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Item
E.
8E, consider extension of long-term rental for Cypress Creek Church. Ms. Griffith.
Yeah, we have someone's using one of our schools and they're wanting to continue to use that, so I'll bring that for the approval.
Item 8F, consider approval of board policy update 112. Dr. Baez,
So,
we're giving you lots of paper
last
today.
Yes.
paper right now,
I'm sorry.
This is the update one.
Thank you.
There's- thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Is there anything out of the ordinary?
I mean, it covers A through G and legal updates and legal by the trust local with some changes that were made. But we kind of covered that when we did the update, when she was here and we did the comprehensive policy review. We were already having conversations about the things that are changing for the update. There's also a video that they provide if you want to listen to that or watch that. It's on our board policy link for our website.
These are required updates.
Legal, yes, most of them are legal. The local ones are just to change the language so that it reflects legal, but we already kind of did that.
G.
Item 8G, consider approval of construction proposals for the Child Development Center renovation project.
yeah, we did receive a bid for that, project and we'll be presenting that for approval at the meeting.
Is it $400 a square foot? No?
I don't even think it was 200, I think it was like 174
Okay.
or something.
Oh, that's better than 400.
Yeah. We only, yeah.
All right.
Full time.
Item 8H, consider approval of land donation agreement with LaCima.
We were in the final stages of, putting together that contract and hopefully we'll have it finalized this week so we can present it. If not, I'll postpone it for, the next meeting, but I believe we're ready to wrap that one up.
Item 9, closed session. Item 9A, discussion regarding superintendent's formative evaluation, 9 and 10, and then consider action regarding superintendent's formative evaluation. And then we will adjourn.
Okay.
Madam President, that's
Question. Were we gonna have a report or an item on, receiving a report from the athletics department on the variety of trainings that athletic staff goes through?
We're preparing that. I reached out to the UIL director to answer some questions, but we can get some information, but I think you wanted probably a more comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that yet. So we're still waiting to hear from Dr. Elsa with UIL.
So it won't be in time for this meeting.
No.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Yes, I wanted to go back to, I guess it was item 8C or 5C of the discussion regarding SMCISD petitioning the legislature to amend the election code, et cetera. So I understand that, I guess, per Robert's Rules of Order, if a trustee were to ask that that be moved down to an action item, that is legally allowable. But just, I guess, for purposes of transparency, because I don't want a citizen to show up or say, well, it was only on paper, the posted agenda as discussion, so now you are moving it to an action item. Is that transparent? Are you conducting business so on and so forth. So I guess my request is that we list it as a discussion item is fine, but that it's also listed separately for possible action. So again, a citizen can't show up the day of and say, you know, we changed the agenda or changed the wording of the agenda.
Right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any trustees?
I also, there was a facility, naming of a facility submitted. I put that on the dais for the board to see. And then Mr. Salcedo did reach out, let us know that the question, where is it cited for the proposed facility change? He put Rodriguez School, but he meant to put San Marcos High School cafeteria, not Rodriguez cafeteria. So I wanted to make that clarification for him.
And Ms. Costilla has asked that we put it on the agenda for February?
Yes.
For this Monday, right?
What would the agenda item language be for that?
What would your agenda item language be?
Why don't, if the board has a problem with it, I can contact Mr. Cruz to put together the language for that agenda item. If they're uncomfortable with having it this month, I'll be more than glad to postpone it till March.
No, I was just asking if it would just
That's fine,
discussion
Mr.
and possible
Gonzalez,
action of
Mr.
renaming district
I don't know.
facility.
I will call.
I didn't know what it was going to say. That's what I was asking. I didn't know.
We can go back and.
Back in your
yeah,
court.
Yeah.
We can go back and look at the agenda items. I did know we followed a certain process for Rodriguez where we went to a committee. I think that's the policy the board has passed. I would have to get with Dr. Baez and double check that policy.
Yeah, I don't think it leaves it up to us.
Yeah, I think it's different for just a
For
part
naming
of a
a
facility.
partial, yeah.
Like plaques and dedications and partials.
Mr. McLaughlin and Ms. Rubando, I met when it was first brought up.
When I first brought it up in
from Ms.
October of last year.
Costilla,
On
we
that
talked
specific
about-
question.
On that.
We
and-
looked at the language.
I just didn't know if it needed like per the application submitted versus, I mean, could I make a motion to rename something in the middle of the meeting? That's just to tighten it up as much as possible on what can and cannot be done. So like per the submitted application for facility renaming or whatever that looks like.
No,
Add it.
he wants to add it to have the discussion and to have possible action.
regarding naming
But it would be Ms.
cafeteria.
Costilla's item, because Ms. Costilla was doing all that work.
I will get with Mr. Cruz to develop the language for it. And if the board, I followed the procedure, I made contact with you in October. You met with the committee, you informed me what needed to be done. I advised Mr. Salcedo, and I'm just following that, but I will, once again, follow with Mr. Cruz for him to develop the language. And if it's possible to put it on the agenda for next Monday, that's fine. If not,
It can go to March.
yeah,
You're
it
okay
can go
with
to
it
March.
going-
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I
Was
mean,
there
I think
some
we just put
discussion
it
on this?
on the, can we not just put it on the agenda as considered the naming of the cafeteria? I mean, put it just straightforward?
That's why I was asking if that's what it.
Yeah, there's
that's
no
what it would
problem
say.
putting it on the agenda,
Okay.
because.
For all purposes and for legal purposes, Ms. Halsey, I will get with Mr. Cruz for the proper wording, okay?
$300.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's that complicated, but if that, it seems to me it's very straightforward, but I'm fine to defer to that.
He may need to look at the copy of the
Policy.
that we set and that we approved, Ms. Costilla. So he may need a copy of the policy.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's part of it.
Yeah,
But
who reviewed the
it's just
policy?
reading. I mean, it doesn't, it says we can do, it's like you can do that or you can do whatever. I'm generalizing. This would fall under the whatever.
Right.
All right.
Okay, presentation and possible action regarding central administration.
Oh, that's the
We're
end of
do-
the agenda. All right.
We're done with did you have any more items?
I did not.
Questions? Okay. Let's go on to central administration.
shack material, not for the,
Which one?
The shack,
okay, but it's not gonna be on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you.
And will this
Thank
be
you.
online for people to see, or?
Yes, the timeline shows that they'll present it in May. They'll bring all the applications forward for your approval. And so we have on this the FAQ, just what their timeline is. And so it will be presented on May the 6th.
But people can find it online, too?
It will be online, it will be in a newspaper.
Okay.
It's an online process, and so because it will be timestamped.
Okay, thank you.
Ready.
All right. So just to recap our last few meetings about central office, here are the main topics that we've discussed. That leasing a facility long-term is not ideal. The project must be within budget. Consider selling property to offset the cost of central office, and the facility should ultimately unite central office. It's just a recap of what we talked about. We currently pay $12,000 per month in rent at our current central office, and as we know, the cost of construction is always increasing. The project must be within budget, so we cannot meet budget by buying a property and building a new construction. We cannot meet budget by repurposing an existing facility, and we cannot afford more than 15,000 square feet based on the price per square foot. The facility should ultimately unite central office, so the building at Hunter and Subtle site allows for expansion for the future, both by building out and by building up. The building on Hunter Road and South Suttles also brings central office together with child nutrition, maintenance, custodial, transportation, purchasing, warehouse, and technology. So some of the pros to building on the South Subtle site, there's no need for bond. It unites SMCISD offices. It allows for future growth, and we avoid selling property at this time for possibly using the LBJ site for something in the future, whether that be an early college or, you know, we can get very creative with that site. And we also stay within budget. So administration's recommendation, as we talked about the last time, is requesting from the board to allocate this exact dollar amount, I don't want, 4.439484, to build a new central office on the current San Marcos CISD property off Hunter and Suttles. Administration will adjust the square footage of the building if needed to make sure the new construction is built on or under budget. So this is our recommendation. We worked with Perkins and Will to come up with a plan for that particular site, and that is the projected amount for a new construction. And really tonight we want to just focus on the site itself, selecting a site so that we can move forward and start surveying and really getting to know that piece of land so we know what we're building on. And as we talked about, this site allows for future growth. So if you notice in the purple, this is phase 1. Phase 2 and phase 3, those are just options for the future. That's not necessarily something we have to do, but Perkins and Will put together phasing to allow for growth. And the purple would be the phase 1, which is the roughly 4.4 million that we are requesting. So that's just the main purpose for tonight, to really ask the board to approve our recommendation or give us feedback in the direction you want us to go.
Ms. Costilla?
Mr. Fernandez, on the last page of the handout you gave us, there's a budget of 4.554889. Is this what the board approved?
Yeah, so the 4.5 was approved by
Right.
the board for the Mendez renovation.
And so we have spent $264,216.
Correct.
And so that leaves us a balance of 42, which this is looks like $200,000 more. So you're asking for the additional $200,000 more so we can meet that 4.439484. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anyone else? Questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Halsey?
How does this sit on the site in relation to the transportation building and the other buildings that are there?
Right in front. So there's the piece of land and then the parking, so the parking lot and then the transportation building. So it would be right in front of the parking lot, in front of transportation.
the stripes
So
of,
where's the entrance?
Near the Hunter
So
Road.
transportation would be back here.
Right, but where's the entrance off Hunter?
Yeah, there's Hunter
Hunter Road right here, Suttles.
and Suttles.
And Suttles is right here.
Right.
So this is Hunter and then Suttles. And you're talking about the entrance to central office?
Where would the entrance to this building be? Would it be the same entrance that's currently exists at Hunter,
I
or
think
is it?
Mr.
That's not yet
Yeah.
determined.
Entrance at Hunter or Suttles?
This is just showing that you can easily do additions onto it. We haven't done any design yet until we got approval from you guys.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. So I know throughout this conversation, there's been discussion of room for future growth. I was wondering if for preparation of whenever we take action on this item, if we can see, I guess, the size of central administration over the last 10 years as far as what's been housed. And like, I guess my question is, do we anticipate in the next 15 or 20 years a ballooning of central administration since I think, how long were we at the former site? I mean, we were there for 30 years and I guess the same building. I know and it became fragmented, but I'm just wondering as far as future growth goes, I want to be able to have that information readily available to see what that projection is as of the trend versus what this building, if phase 2 and phase 3 were built out, what that would look like as far as the size of central administration per se.
What we can do is, as we're starting to do that design, we'll kind of do a master plan so that you can see that, not just through a site plan, building layout, but also through a program, so you can follow that later on in 15 years when you're going, what were we going to add on? And at least you have that and you can track that much better.
Yeah, I guess my point being is so if a citizen says, oh, well, why did you choose this site? Oh, it's for future growth. And then be able to say, oh, well, we currently have X number right now, but it could be built out to facilitate what versus, oh, well, we have room for growth.
Okay, yes, sir.
So do we have a head count right now? Of how many people are in the place where we're renting? How many staff?
Roughly 40, I think roughly around 48. And just to clarify, so phase 1, Mr. Arredondo, does not include a boardroom. So the yellow portion of phase 2, that's like an addition of a boardroom to the central office.
When it was, I deemed it cost savings correct, just to keep the boardroom here and obviously dedicate more space to staffing.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Halsey?
On the item space 01, the public spaces in the lobby, we're providing for 2 computer stations. I'm wondering how many people would come in and apply for jobs in our office on computers currently.
Just walking by there is constant usage of those computers.
Yep.
I'm
By
sure
job applicants?
And we translate, so if we have applicants who need help with Spanish or maybe aren't very savvy with a computer, we have a staff go up and walk them through the whole application process.
Okay, thanks.
Just anecdotally, I think it's a lot of the manual trade positions era that go in there.
Anyone else?
Substitutes and stuff.
Does
Mr.
this,
Redondo?
I think McLaughlin was next, sorry.
Oh.
does this footprint not fit the old site?
What's the square footage of it?
Should, because we have 15,000 square feet of field, so we're supposed to.
It would fit, but my fear is we're getting so full with impervious cover that it might limit you. So I would hate to go with phase 1 and phase 2, but then you wouldn't be able to add on in the future because of impervious cover limits. And so we didn't want to have to run into that again. So that's why we're saying this is the safest direction to go for use of land and giving those options in the future.
But you can add up at the other site.
I have to check the zoning, but I think we can only go up 2 stories in that specific site. I'll double check that for you.
I thought it was T5, but maybe not.
Wasn't there something about trees also, that we couldn't cut down certain
Maybe
trees?
the trees in the front and in the back, so your parking lot would have to be designed around all the trees out there as well. And you saw how that setback for those trees along the front drive are. You'd have to set back from those as well.
Yes.
Mr. Redondo?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Cantu. I guess my first question regarding this, to echo the question from Mr. McLaughlin, is it possible to see what this location would look like at the LBJ site currently in relation to the lot size and what's currently there, just for grins? the next board meeting. And then my second question, Mr. Superintendent, is what is the status on Crossroads and Head Start and the portable buildings there at the LBJ side?
Well, they're still kind of there until we can move them over to Lamar Rebound.
Is that a scheduled thing, or when would that, I guess, when do we forecast the site being available if the district were to choose that site for a new central administration building?
We would like to try to move forward this summer. We've got some, couple of things that, that we need to do in order to move some more spacing. And so we'll have to work on that and try to do that this summer.
So it'd be like Crossroads and Head Start would be out of the portables by the summer?
Crossroads probably yes. I am thinking Head Start.
Yeah, Head Start's not there. Yeah, Head Start's gone.
Okay, someone said they were there the other day. I haven't
Oh,
been by in a
just
couple of weeks. I was
I'll
just
check
so,
it.
but then, so the status of move out then is Head Start is out. Crossroads is still there, forecasted to leave in the summer, or transition to New Lamar. Okay.
And Head Start is at the new Lamar?
No, Head Start, they had a portable that was in, the one next to, Crossroads.
They just moved out of it. They haven't moved elsewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so which departments are not included in this? It's special ed, correct? I can't.
Special ed and,
Student data services,
And where would
Those
we
would be
have them? Where would they be?
Lamar. Or
well, we would move student data services
To
out to, we're gonna try to make some room for them over at the technology building. And so that would
That would make
free up the room for, Crossroads.
At Lamar. I mean,
Lamar,
yeah.
yes.
So in that ideal situation, what department is now, the sole department that wouldn't be at New Central would be what? Or they would all be there?
Special ed.
Special ed would, have all this worked out,
Technology.
Oh, yeah, it would just be, special ed at Lamar.
okay.
And then, of course, on the other side would be the rebound students.
Any other questions?
I
Okay.
concur with Mr. Arredondo, and I'd prefer to see a layout proposal space assessment for the old site before I make a decision.
So we're still needing information, so there will be no action at this time? Is that what I'm hearing from the board?
I mean, could we see
Mr.
like two complete proposals
Udesti
of
actually
Suttles
has-
and LBJ?
He has a,
he has it if you want us to pull it up.
Can we get a copy of it, like a hard copy? If
Want
it
email- you want email
exists
it to me?
already?
Can I go print it out for you guys?
Sure.
Thank you.
5 minutes or something? Or we have something else? As far as the number, I guess that's premature because we're not even dedicating the site. But I'm not super eager to authorize additional funds. I don't know, I did not know we spent $241,000 on an idea that was not doable, that was twice our budget. So that irritates me. Because that's essentially what you're asking for again, is about half of that amount. So I don't know, did we authorize that expenditure or did we?
we didn't begin until you authorized.
But so the global money, when we said we're not gonna spend more than 4.29, once we did that, then you started spending that money on design.
Correct.
Okay.
Site surveying.
Well, for me, I'm still at the 429, which we could probably do on this site.
4.5 is what you
4.5 is
authorized.
what you
Oh,
authorized.
yeah, well, what's left, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Which we could probably still do on the site and make work.
Okay, if you'll allow me to explain something. Okay, I broke it down because you have different phases and we bring those to you at every phase.
Right.
And you've got to understand that this project was a renovation project for an existing building. We brought you schematic design, we brought you design development, and when it goes into construction docs, remember, they have to hire their MEP, they've got to hire civil, and and they've gotta hire, that's what all those costs go into. It's just not for the architect. We went all the way up to that phase, we went to bidding, and it was after they had already done all the documents, did all the drawings, so they did do all the work. It's not that we had planned and that it was supposed to be wasted money. This was the desire, and so we went forth with that. It wasn't until we've got, everything back that we realized that this project was over budget, and did we wanna go forth with that, or did we wanna consider something different? Now, we're going from a renovation to a brand new construction. It's not like I can take what we did with for a reconstruction project and use it for brand new. We can probably use some of the same floor design, but it's not, I can't use the same design. I've gotta everything's gonna have to be redone. So I'm still gonna have those costs, cause that's by contract.
Right, but I would just expect more of our partners that in the schematic, knowing their field and the building trade, that they would know when something was gonna be twice the approved budget, you know? And so before we spent all that money, we would get some sort of red flag, like, all right, we're 45,000 into schematic, right? But maybe before we spend all this money on the special, you know, I have this fear that this thing might be 8.5 or 9 million bucks, right? And be able to at that point say, whoa, let's not spend another 200 grand on an expensive set of plans, right? And that's what I wish had been caught, right? Not really blaming you, Ms. Griffith, just saying that's why we have professionals.
And the great thing about that is we did have a CM at risk on board the entire time. So we, at each phase, we did update you with the price. In schematic design, they did indicate that we were a little bit over. We made refinements, and by design development, we re-presented it to you. We were right back in line. What ended up happening, and we talked about this at the last meeting, was the additional requirements for structural were just an unknown. We had to, when we started to re-roof that entire building, code dictates that because as flat as that structure was, we had to come in and reinforce all of our joists. And that was not, no one would have known that that requirement was gonna be there when we did those initial ideas. We did know we were gonna have to reinforce our structure for our foundation because we're changing use types, and we had that included in there. But when we had to reinforce the joist for that roof, that was a big portion of that cost increase at the end there. And I can go back through the notes when we presented this last time. There were a couple of items that were on there that we had talked about in depth. But we did check that. We had a CM at risk on board the entire time. They reviewed the numbers. We didn't move forward until they told us they felt comfortable.
Did we pay them?
You pay a pre-construction services, if I remember correctly, for the entire cost. And so it's spread. It's a very small number for the entire project.
Another question, sorry, I'm just going through this line by line. The training and teacher development learning lab, it looks to me like it says that this total square footage is 600 feet, but then it says subdividable into 2 spaces of 700 square feet.
I don't know what you're looking at, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the proposal that we have on.
Okay, I can
page
double
are you
check
on?
though.
Page 2? Sorry, page 2 in the training and teacher development learning lab. In the column, it says it's 600 square feet, and then in the description, it says it's dividable into 2 700 square feet classrooms.
So this is the reduced version. So in the original plan, when we were going for the 24,000 square feet,
Okay.
we were gonna be able to do that. We still needed to have some type of training space, so we reduced that square footage
So
down.
it's just one space now that's 600 square feet?
Yes,
Okay.
but you could still subdivide
And
if you
approximately
needed
how
to.
many people can fit into that space for a
So
training?
600 square feet is about the size of a standard classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Mr. Superintendent, I know in, I guess, its original iteration at Mendez Elementary School, contractually, we could have folded this in with the general contractor there doing the renovations and addition. Since this is now a standalone structure, would this mean that it would go through the same bidding and procurement for a general contractor and construction method, or how would that work?
Yeah, we have to bring it back to you as far as the procurement method. Yes, it has to go all new again. So
Okay.
we will bring that back to you for a recommendation.
Anyone else? So are we still looking for information, or
For Andrew to, he's gonna,
when he brings us
Send it,
that?
print it.
Okay. I don't need one. Sure, we'll take a 5-minute break then.
Yeah. Why would you pick anything else?
another question. Sorry about this.
Ms. Halsey?
Sorry, I'm just looking at it for the first time. So if there are 48 people in our current temporary offices, I think I'm counting 50 to 55 people in this, if I'm counting correctly, and I'm only see 2 of those people as marked as future positions. Could we get a list of actually all of the positions that we currently have, and then,
So you want a list of all the people that are currently admin?
yes,
So you just want, like your position and,
department, broken up by department, and then to say, like, these people would all go to the new building, these people would go here, these people would go here, and then a list of any additional positions that you are counting for in this plan.
I know.
Right
I
now,
think, like, some of the titles are spelled out, but some of them just have spaces for X number of people, and I'm not sure who those people are, and if they're future positions or positions we currently have, so, thank you.
right now, special ed is not at the admin building, right?
And phase 1 in both of these proposals is 2 stories, correct? We start out at 2 and like expand to further
Here he
2-story additions, or how does that work? I
From
see
a cost-
pink all in.
And that's something we need to determine. Once we have the geotech, a better understanding of the geotech, that's gonna tell us, is it smart to go 2-story or 1-story? And from a pricing standpoint, if we are required to do a structural foundation, then we definitely wanna go 2-story, because we're not having to pay for that expensive foundation type. We reduce our roof and those types of things, and it makes it easier to add on in the future. So, but we wanna just double check that right now. A single-story tilt wall building can go up pretty quickly. You save some money on schedule and those types of things. So we wanna get a better understanding of geotech before I answer that for sure right now. But ideally, we'd love to be able to go 2-story.
I have a follow-up question for Mr. Uresti. Is there a point, Coleman, where those, I guess, lines of efficiency and cost, like, I guess, divert? So, for instance, if we added additional square footage to phase 1 but didn't go 2 stories, like, does that make sense? Instead of going 2 stories in the very beginning but adding on actual square footage totally out on 1 story, is it still always cheaper to go 2 and just add square footage, or is it at some point cheaper to go out and add more square footage?
Yes, it depends on a couple of things with tilt wall. It's a very specific system. The great thing about tilt wall is what they do is they form the walls on the slab. So they pour the slab, they form up the walls, and they just tilt them up, boop, and then you have walls, and you just go super fast. So it's that repetition of panel along a certain direction. In this case, we're hoping for a great geotech recommendation that's going to say tilt wall is acceptable, because if depending on your foundation type, tilt wall might not be the best idea. So that's going to be a gauge, I think. But in this case, a 2-story box tilt wall would make a lot of sense at this point in time, thinking about that.
And I understand that we kind of encumbered the administration by that dollar amount allotted by the board in a previous vote. What would the additional cost be if we tried to get special education? And because I know the argument has been year after year, efficiency, everyone not working closely together, so on and so forth, driving. So what would it be to get everyone in one building there? Like, what additional square footage would you need on either of these to get SPED and student data services in there?
Let me do some research on that, and I'll get a program and a square footage. Something that we can do from an architectural or construction standpoint is we can bid additional square footage. We can draw it and bid it as an alternate to see how much that actually costs. So that's one option that we could, to give you flexibility on those choices as well. But let me first find out the square footage, and then we'll get back with you on that.
Perfect, thank you.
Ms. Costilla?
I asked the question, but I need to ask it in front. On the alternate site, or an alternate site here regarding at the old central administration location, just for my understanding and clarification, I know that Centro occupies that whole side of it, at that whole building. And my understanding from some years past is when we first moved in there and we got the lease was that Centro had 35 feet in the back of it. And I know that they use a lot of that area for students to go outside, they eat lunch in that area. So I see that if we were to go, and I'm just saying, presupposing, I see that the building, if we're looking at that existing location, that it sits real close to the Central building, which would cut down on the amount of space that they have in the back for children to go outside. So is 35 feet not 35 feet back of that building? Or what is it showing here?
Yeah, that's removing all the portables.
So what would be the space between the Central building and where the new building starts?
For this planning diagram, we based it off of 20 foot off the building. That's required by code.
So
for fire.
actually, we'd be losing not only some space that Centro has, but it'd be having this huge building right next to it where it would be very difficult for children to go out there and congregate in some form or fashion.
Right. Yeah, yes, we'd have to get rid of, I mean, the playground, it would become a detention pond basically because of the impervious cover that we have.
Well, I don't think they generally use that, but they use the back part of it, right in the back part of it, for children to go eat their lunch and just go outside.
And by code, I have to have, if I have a building, a business building, then I have to have a certain number of parking spots on site. And I think we're meeting that. So you can see we filled the entire lot up with parking. So
And
it would
also
be,
cuts
it would be
parking
code
central.
dictated. And that's some of that, those are some of those concerns we talked about.
Yeah.
You're really limiting the type of use of space
Right.
that you have on this site.
Thank you.
Mr. Uresti, I'm sorry, just before you leave the podium one last time, I guess just for a point of information, when this comes back for an action item, can we just get, I guess, the city code requirements of setbacks between adjacent buildings? And obviously, this is all still district-owned property, so taking those things into consideration, what that looks like, just to alleviate any concerns folks
Absolutely.
might have. Thank you.
Yeah, so they'll have a setback from the road. Typically, they'll have an easement for utilities. And I think typically you're looking at between 15 and 20 feet setback from the road all the way around the property. And then for fire code, you'll have a minimum of 20 feet between buildings, but we'll be able to show that. We can show that visually.
If you own both of them, they still have to be 20 feet
Yes,
apart.
because if that one catches fire, they don't want the other one to catch fire
Ms. Hanson?
or fall on each other. as well.
Mr. Cardona, my understanding when we demolished the old one and the playground, we were leaving the parking lot behind Centro, is that correct? We're demolishing that?
We took everything out. Yeah, it's all dirt.
There's some buildings there, but
There's the portables.
There's still parking behind Centro, because
You're
I go there
talking
every
behind
Thursday.
There's parking in
Where-
between the portables that remain. and-
Right.
right.
But the other parking lot that was.
Yeah. No, I
Oh,
know
there-
that's
that's
gone.
gone.
I'm just talking about right behind, directly behind Centro.
Right here, right
So
there
if
you're
we
talking
built
about.
this, that would be gone too.
Yes, because they would,
Okay,
they
so
would all
the,
be parking.
so the only parking Centro would have would be in front of their building
Yes. Mhm.
on the street.
You mean right now?
No, if we
No.
go with this
Oh.
proposal.
Presumably could share parking after hours.
Which I think is a predominant time when
Right.
they have programming is after school district business hours.
In the
weekends.
summer, we have them during the day. In the summer, we have programming during the day.
Anyone else?
I'm sure they would rather, I mean, I don't want to speak for them. I guess we can talk to the group, but it seems they would prefer to have us as a neighbor than who we might sell to. You know, since it's been such a mutually supportive relationship all these years. And, you know, there would be no guarantee that if we drew a line 20 feet off their edge and sold it to the highest bidder, that they would get as much cooperation from someone that was a more arm's length, you know, relationship than the district.
Sorry, Coleman, I have one
Mr.
more.
Arredondo?
Thank you. If this site was chosen, is there a way that, I guess, the district could encourage or ask that the design of New Central mirror somewhat the design of the Bonham campus, kind of the idea and theme behind it, so it wouldn't look like two separate buildings. I don't know if that's possible or if people would want the two buildings to look the same, but if we're looking at like a cohesive block of a neighborhood versus modern, mid-century modern versus what Centro is, so that it is a more seamless transition.
Ideally, I would totally agree with you. That's gonna come down to cost. Really, this is priced as a tilt wall building right now. And that's what the going rate is. I mean, we just, there's one that just finished on Suttles right now that is right in line with this. They actually have a flat site that's very easy to build on, so we're right at that line.
Yeah.
If we were to look at a different type of building type, I can explore that, but the cost would definitely be different.
But like paint and color schemes and
Oh,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, I mean,
But-
very easily to match the.
But Tiltwell's so stark. When you're driving around, just it's those panelized system, and they paint one gray and one tan, and so it's very hard to cover that up. Some contractors try to fix that with a veneer, like a thin tile veneer, but that just increases your price immediately. But I would definitely take that into effect for sure. I totally agree with you.
But there would be design elements you could incorporate, like the window shapes would reference the window shapes or something like that.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need any further information, or we're going to take action, or?
I would prefer to take action when we're in a regular board meeting and have made that a more public posting.
Are we legally, can we take action right now? If someone made a motion on a proposal?
We've got
It's
it,
on there.
we've got it on the agenda, presentation and possible action regarding central administration, and this was posted that way. Are you, what am I hearing from y'all? What do y'all?
I mean, I'm not gonna make a motion. I'd prefer if we're gonna spend more than $4 million that it be
Public.
in a normal
Yeah.
meeting setting rather than tacked on. A workshop made sense on agenda prep, and that's what we talked about at the last meeting. So anyone that was here, I would think would be surprised that we incorporated an action item and then changed what we were doing either in location or in price. So at least as an individual trustee, I would prefer to add, we can add this to the February agenda. It's certainly not too late.
It's not too late.
Could add action, regarding.
Is that the consensus
I agree with Mr. McLaughlin.
Likewise.
over here? Consensus?
It's fine.
That's fine. I have no problem doing it tonight,
One more
but that's
week later?
fine.
Okay, then we'll add it for action at the next board meeting, the 18th. Consideration and approval of an order calling a bond election in the district and other matters related thereto.
So I was a requesting trustee for this, and surprise, surprise, we had a conversation about taking it out to the voters, and the costs of the building significantly decreased, so mission accomplished. So we're good to go. We'll remove this item.
We can remove this item? We're good on this item, okay.
I move that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
A.
Moved by Ms. Halsey, seconded by Ms. Hanson, that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
7-0.